we've got words. We work in words, and words have their meanings, what they refer to, what they represent. A word is basically a pattern, like text or like vocal patterns, um, that are held by a community. That is, the local language is sustained by the community, as is its reference, what it refers to. So, dog in English refers to that animal. Um, there's also another aspect to words that is also kind of a reference, but not the same. It's the feeling of a word. That is, whether it's got positive or negative connotations, and what kind of positive and negative connotations. So there's this relationship between the meaning of a word and the feeling of the word. And both are sustained in two forms. One is as the symbols involved, the letters of the word dog, and the other is what it points to. So I think that's the terrain we operate on. That's the currency we employ, not just in our communication between ourselves, but in our thinking. That is, I think that without language, we would think very differently because we wouldn't be able to do all this concept manipulation that humans do and no other creature can do to the same extent or by the same means. They don't have vocabularies as large as ours, and they don't have a grammar for sequencing them together to make bigger, larger, coarser grain reference. So if I say the dog is on the mat, that's a bigger chunk. But we can do that. We can build that out as I am here with all of my words. We can build that out into all sorts of concepts. So let me go back to what it is we've got. We've got these socially maintained symbol sequences that are socially maintained as referring to things. And there are two references. There's what the thing points to, the word dog to the animal, and also the feeling. And there's a bunch of words that don't have any feeling at all. There's nothing about saying dog. You could put it in a sentence like, he died like a dog, one of Trump's favorites, right? He died like a dog. He puts the dog at the end to make himself sound tough. It evokes a feeling in him. You say these words and they will evoke feelings, or people say them at you, and they're capable of evoking feelings. Combinations of words do that as well, but I'll just stick with words themselves. So we've got these feeling words, or words that are heavily loaded with positive or negative connotations that describe feelings. So love feels good, and so it's got positive connotations, and because it refers to a sensation that is positive in us. And I think this feeling part of words is the first part we learn. That is, we go through phases in some ways similar to a dog learning the difference between good boy and no. So we'll tend to hear that and gradually figure out the reference. And then to some extent throughout our lives, because feelings drive so much in us, concepts are a relatively thin overlay on feelings. We are feeling organisms first and foremost. It's just it's the most convincing set of signals that we pay attention to. There's all sorts of convincing signals that go on reliably within our bodies, our physiology. But in terms of what we're consciously aware of, it would be feelings first. They're very convincing. I think number one driver for all humans is comfort in their own skin. By whatever means, whatever means are available that they find, whatever affordances they can find. So, if we're feeling driven and there are these words and phrases that have feeling connotations, positive and negative, they will be what we tend to focus on most. And when you think about it in these ways, think about branding in this way, that is marketing and branding. What you're trying to do is bind a feeling to a word, your name brand, Coca-Cola, and then bind that word proprietarily to your product. So tissue paper is just a generic name for a product. It's more neutral than Bounty or Kleenex or any of these because these companies have poured millions into trying to associate. It's a bad example. Apple would be better. Tesla might be better. Depends on the crowd, and this is an important issue about it. So what you've got is companies acting as, you could say, wordsmiths, trying to make their words refer to their products and also evoke a positive feeling in us. Now take that out of marketing. I think we do that all day long. I think that's most of what human conversation is, including self-talk, the talk we tell ourselves throughout the day, consciously and unconsciously, not necessarily in words, but concepts that we wouldn't have if it weren't for words. Our rationales, our rationalizations, our morals, our moralizations, all of that would be, you could say, habits that were accumulated by practicing with words. For example, parents telling you what you should do, and branding things, proprietary and otherwise. So here's an example. Take a word like patriot. So that's got positive connotations. And there's a branding competition about it. That is, there would be different factions. Or take a word like Christian. That's a proprietary brand. The others are kind of wordsmithing. They're the coining of neologisms. So, Coca-Cola associated with a positive feeling. That's basically a kind of wordsmithing, trying to make it refer to their product. So, but let's say you've got two factions that both accuse each other of being traitors, bad connotations, and patriot, good connotation, or Christian and non-Christian, or Christian and Muslim. You get all these different branding moves that are trying to associate a proprietary product with a feeling, good or bad. And you'll also get these situations where for one crowd, a word, a branded term, is positive, and for another it's negative. And I'd say that culture wars are largely played in this currency. Words, their references, and their connotations. So take a word like MAGA, Make America Great. It fills a certain faction, a certain cluster of us, with a sense of pride, even bravado on the same level as Trump's like a dog. And to other people, it's a dirty word. It's a word for something that's creepy, disingenuous, hypocritical, arrogant, stupid. So you'll get these kinds of clashes, and they're played out in words. So if there's anything I'd recommend to anyone who is interested, it's try to pay a little less attention to the feeling and more to the word. So an example, actually, try to the extent you can or the extent you want, but I have found it incredibly effective. Because people will accuse you of acts. It's not just feelings that we name with positive and negative connotations, but you can take a word like quit or steadfast. This is about actions, about behaviors. It's about observed behaviors, pessimist, optimist, those kind of words. They're descriptive terms. They're the kinds of things we might psychologize at each other or diagnose honestly about each other, defensive, these kinds of words. Yeah, they're about feelings, but they're also about behaviors. And some of them are very positive. Defensive sounds negative, but caring sounds positive. Well, if you strip off the positive and the negative enough, if you stop using words by smell, does it smell sweet or sour, you notice that actually they're descriptions of behaviors, not attitudes. Loving is a behavior, and it's not always good. Loving thermonuclear war, loving Nazis. There's lots of ways. It's obvious that there are things we want to love and don't want to love. But you don't notice that if you are stuck with feel. You would never want to be unloving. So, likewise, uncaring. Care sounds, it's a behavior. It implies a sentiment, but it doesn't have to. So if you strip away the motivation, just relax the motivation for a minute, disconnect it from the word, and stop thinking of the word in positive terms exclusively, caring is good, uncaring is bad, you gain a freedom you may not know you have, just sitting right there waiting for you. If someone accuses you of being uncaring, you change your habits of thought to remember what caring or loving mean. They mean a behavior that takes effort, substantial effort, and you have limited effort to afforded to you. That is, you can't do everything. So you don't actually want to be caring, and you don't want to avoid being uncaring, loving, unloving. You want to care about the right things, not the wrong things. So people will tend to want to brand you. This is a generic brand, caring, uncaring. So unlike a proprietary brand like MAGA, okay, or Christian. People will try to brand you. to move you around, to shape your behavior, basically to gaslight your behavior. Because I think we're all gaslighting. How could we not be? We're all not at the severe levels. I mean, we're not all doing it to the same degree, and we need to keep a lid on it. But still, to some extent, if I'm trying to persuade someone to accommodate me, I will give them my representation of reality. Um, and that's a kind of gaslighting as a behavior. Now, I could do it manipulatively where I know my story is wrong, or at least bent and biased to get them to accommodate me. But I could also believe it. In fact, there's a lot of benefit in me believing bullshit. That is, if I can believe it, I could persuade more people of it. It's much easier to lie when you believe your own lies. So, and I'm not just talking about me, I'm talking about people, but I'm not excluding me. So people will do this. We will all do this. We will use a word's feeling to shape your behavior. And I'm saying there's an incredible freedom that comes from dissociating the feeling, the positive and negative connotation, from the reference, the effort one would make to get someone to accommodate. The effort one would make to accommodate someone, the effort someone would make to accommodate someone. People will try to move you around with it, and you want to be able to make your own choices about where you should care and where you shouldn't care. So I'm fond of saying, perhaps you mistake me for someone trying to be caring. I'm not. I'm trying to care about the right things, not the wrong things. I want to be uncaring about some things. I want to prioritize that way. So you get that benefit by relaxing the feeling part, dissociating the word, generic or proprietary branded term, love, kindness, generosity, fear, anger, all of these words that have, quitter, steal, rob, deprive, all these words. Some of them are describing feelings, some are describing behaviors. You get a whole lot of freedom when you relax the emotional association with a word. Strip it of its connotations, positive and negative. Look at what it actually means in terms of behavior and recognize that it's a behavior in your repertoire. Anger is a behavior in all of our repertoires. Fighting is something in all our repertoire. So there will be times when people will bully you with those terms. Trying to start a fight? Well, sometimes I am. There are times when I want to start a fight because I'm dealing with someone who is doing something that is frustrating to me and won't talk about it, or will weasel out of the conversation. Weasel's another one of these negative terms. That is, they'll slide their way out. They'll evade it to some extent. And I'm trying to get their attention. So yes, I will stir the shit sometimes. And I assume that all of us do. And that we all have to manage that. We have to keep a lid on it. There's a limit to how much we can do. But we have to be able to use those tools. They're in our repertoire for a reason. They evolved in our repertoire. It's not like we can transcend our repertoire. Anyway, drop the feeling. Lighten up on the feeling side of words. Forget the connotation long enough to look at the denotation. What is the thing referring to? These loaded words. What is love really?